Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of SUGtalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guests, we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode. I'm delighted to be joined today by Kate James, Senior Teaching Fellow of Business Analytics at the University of Portsmouth, and Martin Golloggly, Director of University Alliance's EMEA North at SAP. So welcome to you both. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a closer look at developing the next generation of SAP talent, the role universities can play, and some of the educational pathways available. Now, given this episode is focused on skills and learning, it got me thinking about my own education and my favourite subject at school. Mine was games, and even when our sadistic games teacher had us doing cross-country in rain, snow, hailstone, whatever the weather, it was still better for me than being stuck in the classroom. But Martin and Kate, what was yours? And if I may start with you, Kate, if I may.
So my favourite subject at school was mathematics. I've always liked subjects where you can get the right answer rather than it being subjective. So I liked sciences, but specifically mathematics, and went on to study largely math subjects at university as part of a management science degree.
Oh, very good, very good. Getting the right answers. I think I often got the wrong ones at school, but anyway, my budgeting's a bit better now, but back then. And Martin?
My favourite topic at school was actually studying law when I got to do my A-levels. And I think one of the reasons why I love law so much, despite being rather distant from where I ended up in the tech sector, is that it still uses a great deal of logical thought. So you work through problems and arrive at what would hopefully be the right conclusion. Similar in some ways to maths, but what drew me to the law was that you were also dealing with real people and that you were solving problems that real people were facing. So I love the idea of having that mixture of logic and humanity, I guess.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you both. I was the odd one out there with wanting to not being too academic. So, okay, moving swiftly on. We've talked about SAP skills in several of our previous episodes, and it is an issue that remains front of mind for many of our members in the UK and Ireland SAP user group, and particularly when it comes to attracting and developing the next generation of talent. So just to get us started, it would be great if you could talk about perhaps your respective roles and how you're supporting the development of graduate talent. So Kate, if I may start with you.
Well, I'm a senior teaching fellow in business analytics, specifically at Portsmouth Business School. And we teach business analytics at both undergraduate and postgraduate level, along with other subjects like business intelligence and enterprise systems and processes, where we use material provided by the University Alliances as part of our teaching. So we focus more on the underlying theory. So we teach descriptive statistics, predictive analytics, and prescriptive analytics. So they understand the underlying theory of what's happening, but then we bring the SAP applications in to demonstrate how these things are actually implemented in real life. So we don't just use SAP, so we use R programming as well at both undergraduate and postgraduate level, and show them how the R programming can be integrated with SAP.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. So not just, if you like, that theoretical side as well, by bringing in the other solution, you can see how it's demonstrable in business and how it can be used there.
Yeah, I think it's really important that it's not just theoretical, because these subjects are very practical subjects, and just knowing the theory doesn't really spark as much of an interest
Yeah.
in students. But as soon as you give them an application to play with, then they get more excited.
Yeah, I can really see that. And Martin, your role.
Yeah, I run the University Alliance's program for EMEA North, which for us is the UK and Ireland, Benelux, Nordics, and I have a colleague of mine that I work very closely with in France. The University Alliance's program is something which began more than 20 years ago, very much as a corporate social responsibility effort on SAP's part. But over the last certainly 5, 6, 7 years, it's morphed much more into a how do we actually resolve some of the really serious challenges that the IT industry and SAP faces in skills development and recruitment and so on. So our remit now is to build relationships with universities that want to give, just as Kate's been referring to, sort of practical examples of how you would implement some of the theory that you'd learnt at university. And the best analogy that I've used in the past when trying to explain what it is that we're trying to do is if you were teaching, say, something like aeronautical engineering, something like that, and you had a relationship with, let's say, Rolls-Royce engines, something like that, then one of the barriers, I guess, to more advanced learning for a student would be that there comes a point where you have to stop being theoretical and actually have to literally take an engine apart and look at it, to really give you that clearer insight into how the theory actually applies. And in the case of some things like, say, like an engine, it would be a 40-50 million pound engine. One of the nice things that University Alliances can do for universities and educational institutions in general is to offer various SAP systems to universities that want to use those systems to illustrate the points that they're actually making in the taught classroom. And also, of course, trying to keep it as up to date and as current and as exciting for the students as possible.
Oh, thank you both. And just following on from that, Martin, what's your impression of the current state of SAP skills in the UK and Ireland?
Well, we've got a larger skills shortage. I think one of the issues that the world is facing at the moment is that I say that it's similar to what happened back into the 14th century, when a lot of people back in sort of the feudal era, a lot of people discovered that they had valuable transferable skills. And so the demand for certain skills went up, and at the same time, the amount of flexibility and mobility that people had improved. And so there was a huge, intense increase in the demand for skills. At the same time, companies having to fight to attract the skills that they actually wanted, or back in the feudal era. These days, it's very much a kind of replication of that. What we've had is 3 or 4, 5 years of really incredibly rapid growth in the adoption of tech. Tech is now a consumable as much as it is anything else. So SAP skills and any tech skills have needed to respond to a general growth. So the industry itself just needs more people with IT skills. But at the same time, you've got far more breadth in the technologies that are actually available. So if you were to look at not just SAP, but other companies as well, that might have a portfolio of 100, 200, 300 different products, you need to find individuals who either have specialized in one very niche area, or somebody that has a portfolio of skills transferable across multiple different systems. And it's difficult to do that in a lot of cases. So my own impression from talking to a lot of partners and customers, I probably have an ongoing conversation at the moment with maybe a dozen partners, and the skills that they have suggested are the ones that are the most severely lacking at the moment, are skills that perhaps weren't even in demand, say 5, 6, 7 years ago. So that's ultimately where we're heading, and I don't see that that's something which could be easily resolved. However, it's something which we need to attempt to resolve, not just SAP, but the wider IT industry, and in fact, the wider tech industry in general.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, thank you for that. And Kate, your view on that?
Well, in discussion with Martin and the University Alliances, probably about 3 years ago now, we started developing an MSc, which was designed to try and meet the needs of industry. So that MSc combines the theory with the practical applications, but everything is moving forward. So the advantage to us of being with the University Alliance is that things are updated. So we do get updated syllabus and curricula that allow us to take our students a bit further forward. But we, as a university, we are not training students to be experts in that in any tech as such. It's just giving them that experience. But I think my from talking to students that have graduated and have gone on to jobs, their experience of being able to use the technology in the lab in as a student has really benefited them, just having, because they have that slight edge over so many other students who perhaps haven't had those opportunities. So being able to give students the chance to use some of this technology before they leave university, I think really gives them an advantage and widens the opportunities available to them.
Thank you. And I'd just like to touch on a couple of points, if I may, from both of you. One, obviously, what you were talking about there, Martin, around the Freudian era and the transferable skills, the more mobility in the population to take those skills elsewhere. So obviously, over the past couple of years, we've had a lot of remote working, and potentially that may continue in many organisations well into the future. Do you see that as a challenge, opportunity, or both?
Both. Probably not a particularly surprising answer. I think one of the challenges which has emerged is that a lot of companies had access to the technologies that enabled them to undertake remote working, remote learning to support remote working and that kind of thing, and have adjusted actually very, very quickly. Given this is only for the last 18 months or so, you've had a lot of companies that have been able to switch a lot of activities that previously they wouldn't have dreamt of moving online. So I think in some cases, I think it's more of a cultural issue. There are certain companies and certain industries that would prefer people to be physically located. Obviously, there are certain industries that people have to be physically located. I did actually have a conversation with one of my colleagues maybe only a couple of weeks ago where we were talking about the airline industry. And we were saying, well, how much of the core aspect of actually flying an aircraft and having people being moved around airports and so on could be moved online. However, what can be achieved is, because the infrastructure for managing all those people is generally online now anyway, what you can do is massively improve on the efficiencies of moving people around and enabling people to communicate using appropriate platforms and appropriate technologies that enable them to collaborate in the easiest way possible. And I think we've seen a lot of very rapid learning in that sector. If I were to point my sort of finger at any one particular industry, though, and say that perhaps more could have been done at an earlier stage, ironically, it probably would have been higher education. Because I've been involved in dealing with universities and working with partner institutions for maybe 17 years now. And that was post-graduation. And a lot of universities were perceiving online activities as a threat, online teaching as a threat, as something that they saw. Okay, there's the online learning industry and there's the university sector, and the two of them wouldn't mix. now I think a lot of the more forward-thinking institutions are actually recognizing they're intrinsically reinforcing and supportive. If you have materials which students can actually take away and they're in the classroom and they get hands-on experience with something, and then they can, in their own time, go and look at very short units of whatever online learning materials they find most appropriate, then enables them to overlook or basically analyze the same material again, but to do so in a manner which helps them remember or helps them understand more clearly, then that's a massive advantage. So I really think it depends on the industry. It depends on the degree of data that is produced by the industry. It depends on the cultural preferences of the industry, and it depends on the degree of which individual companies, institutions see the future of remote working and remote learning, which, by the way, I think those two are intrinsically linked. I don't think it's really possible to have remote working without also being able to enable your staff to develop the skills necessary. Otherwise, you're leaving them on their own. They can be feeling very isolated, and you need to maintain that network.
Yeah, and I do think that is a challenge. And you talk about industries there, and you mentioned airports, etc. Well, I think next time I'm on a flight, I'm going to check that the cockpit is manned and they're not at home in the bedroom using Microsoft Simulator to get me wherever I want to go. and Kate, you were talking about that, the experience and use of tech has put your graduates in a really good position when moving into business. And are you seeing any specific skills that you're seeing in demand from employers?
Um, Not necessarily, no. I think it's just having a wider range of experience rather than just having maybe a little bit of Excel, a little bit of sort of the Microsoft basic packages. Just having something different, something like S4HANA, just having experienced that as a user rather than somebody like a developer. We teach both the development we teach at postgraduate level, but even undergraduates who've just experienced using S4HANA. I had a student, he's in his final year now. He actually did his placement at SAP, and he puts that down to having actually used S4HANA in his second year and got some experience of that, because he felt then that he knew a bit more about the company, about what they're trying to do with that package, when he went to work there, when he went for his interview and then subsequently went to work there. So I think it really does help. I've had another student who's just finished the postgraduate degree, and she's gone to work at the company that she did her placement in. So as part of our postgraduate degree, we do placements working with local businesses. So she worked at Capgemini. She created a digital transformation project when she was working there. So they just do their 3 months in the summer, and then they write up a report and give a presentation back to their employer. She took everything from the teaching that she'd had in the postgraduate degree, so things like digital transformation, digital strategy and leadership, working with digital business applications, specifically S4HANA, business analytics. She took all of those things forward to that digital transformation project and impressed sufficiently um, to be offered a role in Capgemini afterwards. And I don't think that was necessarily the technology that she'd had, although obviously having had experience in that technology helped. I think it's all the other skills, the sort of being able to be creative in what they're doing in their transformation projects, working together as a team, being able to present, being able to write coherently, all those sorts of skills, I think, added to the technology is what gets our students the edge.
That's interesting. That blend,
Mm.
if you like, that blend of skills gives I suppose, it gives a more rounded individual as well in when going into business. And from SAP's perspective, Martin, are you seeing any specific skills that are more in demand from your customers?
I think if you've got two, actually no, I would say you've probably got three different tiers of demand at the moment. On the one hand, there is obviously there's always the standard, the generic, all-encompassing S/4HANA that you can use to basically not only manage 90% of an organization or 100%, depending on what it is that you wanted to do. When you're actually delivering an experience to students and you're trying to illustrate to them the power of a management information system and the power of S/4HANA specifically, what the students want to do is to actually gain access to a system which provides them with an overview of an entire organization. So the skills that they will have there when they're actually at university relate to, well, how does, for example, financial management compare to things like operations or procurement, that kind of thing. And they get a feel for the organization as a whole. So number one skills that are actually required by customers fulfilled to that degree would be around the general view of how does a person who is getting perhaps an introduction to SAP, or they're 2 or 3 years into their career, how do they see SAP fitting in across an entire organization? So that's number one sort of skill. When I'm looking at really specific aspects of not only SAP but other information systems as well, we've got the second tranche would be the things like analytics, SAP Analytics Cloud and so on, because that takes that first set of skills, that first data set where you're managing an entire organization, and it enables you to basically ask questions and then answer the questions, which is obviously something which is crucially important when we're dealing with an industry which is moving quite as fast as our industry works. Being able to answer questions based on the data you've gathered from what could be a huge organization, and being able to answer those questions in minutes or whatever, it is a very, very short time scale rather than, weekly as it may have been a few years ago. So that's a set of skills which is highly in demand. It's analytics, it's being able to ask the right questions and so on. In a third technical way, obviously we've got certain aspects of real computing that are also in demand by some of the partners. So if you're looking at things like algorithms, you're looking at machine learning, you're looking at artificial intelligence, you're looking at cybersecurity. So there's a lot of demand for those. And one of the issues, in fact, coming back to the earlier comment I made about fragmentation, is that it's quite difficult or rare for somebody to have skills across the board. So a lot of students, a lot of people in the early careers at SAP, when they're looking at what skills that they want to develop, hence where the shortages could be, they'll end up heading towards something which interests them personally and which they think there's a future in. But the such is the pace of change and the growth, in particular things like cybersecurity, the skills that the students require, not only at a theoretical level but to actually get hands-on with the technology, means that they need to get access to some very, very advanced tech and some very high quality teaching to be able to really fully grasp what it is that they're actually looking at. So when I'm looking at skill shortages across the board, I would say one is there is a shortage generally in being able to actually see an organization as a whole. Second one would be in the sort of the cutting edge aspects of SAP, where you have more of those sort of business interests, where you might be looking, in fact, at business students a lot of the time that would be interested in analytics. And the third would be in the far more in-depth technical aspects, such as machine learning, AI, cybersecurity. And you generally, as I say, will find that students will drift towards one or two, but it's very rare that you would have somebody that would be an expert or want to become an expert in all three.
Yeah, thank you. And just on that point, obviously you mentioned analytics a couple of times there, and SAP Analytics Cloud, etc. And I suppose that's where you come in, Kate, from the University of Portsmouth's perspective, and on top of what you're doing to, if you like, get your students ready from that understanding the business analytics and utilising the tools that can help them when they go into business. What other things is the university doing to help students and really to help businesses by developing the next talent?
We obviously give them a initial look at the software. I'm not going to claim that we train students to be experts, but there is a pathway within the degree for them to access Learning Hub and then do the courses on SAP Learning Hub and gain SAP certification. So that is a pathway that we offer via UK&I SUG to give them the opportunity. So if there are students who are really keen to become certified, and actually last year a fair number of students did take up that offer of being able to go for certification, that pathway is open to them. So I think that's probably the main way that we can help students to become qualified, and hopefully meet some of the needs of the industry that Martin was talking about.
Thank you. And just from my own interest, I suppose, from those students that took up the Learning Hub and utilised that training to become certified, did that help them in their search for roles, or point them in a specific direction?
I think, to be honest, it's probably too early to say. We've only just had our first lot of students graduate. So I know some of them are still looking for roles. They sort of got their results just before Christmas. So they're in that process of looking for roles. There were a number that were really interested in becoming certified in developing in S/4HANA. That seemed to be because that's the software that they use the most, I suppose, as part of the degree.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Well, I'll speak to you separately offline on, if we can provide any more support to you and your students in linking you with our membership with business throughout the UK and Ireland. I'll certainly make contact on that. But so from the perspective of businesses and universities working closer together, do you think there's more can be done there? And again, Kate, if I can just start with you on that one.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, we already have our digital business consultancy project as part of the MSc. So it's not, we don't do a dissertation, we have this project. We felt that it was much more important for students to be able to practically use some of the skills that they'd acquired during the course. So they do a digital business consultancy project. Not all students get to link up with companies, and that's largely because of capacity. So we only have links with certain numbers of companies, and those companies then offer a project to the student that they can work on. It's normally a digital transformation project, so thinking about how some aspect of their business can be transformed. I would really like to see more companies get involved in that. So actually take the opportunity to get some students in and get them engaged in the work of that company and use the skills that they have. It also highlights students that they might want to recruit. So some of these students are very very good students that have really taken on board everything from the course, and they're very marketable students. So it would benefit businesses to get hold of those students early on to identify which ones that they might want to recruit. I would also like to see more mini projects. If businesses didn't actually want to take on students as placement students, just having small projects that students could work on in groups, maybe as part of a module, would be really, really interesting, because we use the GBI data, which is the manufactured company that University Alliances use, but actually being able to work on that data and then have some real data from an actual company to mimic the processes would be really useful. And finally, if I could just go on one
Of
more
course you
bit,
can.
it's guest lectures. If businesses feel that they have something to offer or something to share with students, it's really helpful for students to get those perspectives and those opinions from the people actually doing the jobs that they are aspiring to get at the end of their course. So that can be really helpful.
Thank you very much. Martin, anything to add from you on that point?
Oh, so much. Yeah, I think I've been bouncing around the University Alliances program, as I say, for 17 years, and have run various programs across 3 continents. And if there's one thing which I think could always be done better, it would be the relationship between universities and the both industry and of course government. I think I would just reiterate a lot of what Kate's just said, because the way that a university takes advantage of the various opportunities that University Alliances offer is that they would use the software for teaching purposes. So we provide access to a range of SAP solutions that the universities can use to, as I say, illustrate concepts that they've already decided have gone into specific courses. And we have other opportunities as well. So, for example, you can use our student pricing offering for getting access to Learning Hub and undertaking, at the moment, 18 different SAP certifications. So, in that sense, the students have that as a sort of a good introduction to SAP as a technology and SAP as a qualification, and understand the importance of it. But for me, it's also understanding the excitement of it and understanding that it's a complex challenge, and it's a complex challenge which is highly intellectually, and let's not push it around the bush, but I mean, it's also financially very rewarding for people at an early stage of their career. So I've always been really interested in doing things that will provide other opportunities for students that are a little bit more creative. So at an entry level, I guess, would be that you could, as an organisation, you could work with a university to write something like a short case study, so that actually students can have something which might be only, say, 5, 6, 7 pages long. Could be a Harvard-style case study around a specific problem. And that way, the student gets to see a proper SAP solution, how it actually resolves something and provided an opportunity for an SAP user. But at the same time, it enabled them to really grasp and understand how SAP works in the real world. And also perhaps understand where they themselves would like their careers to go. If you look at a case study and you think, well, that's an interesting problem, it's an interesting way that they resolve that, the chances are that that student is then also going to be able to say that, well, that's something that they would or would not be interested in going and having a look at. I'd like to see a lot more case studies. We have 2 or 3 that we actually teach in the UK. There's another sort of half a dozen that a colleague of mine has written in France, for example, around hotel groups and so on. So we certainly have them. But I'd like to see some case studies written on things that are perhaps a little bit more unusual. Maybe something related to, a company in a merger and acquisition situation, for example. Or you could have a company which has suddenly, perhaps even due to COVID, has enjoyed like huge growth and has had to deal with that. On the visiting lecturers, I must admit, at the moment I do get a lot of requests for the visiting lecturers as well. So at the moment I am doing, I think, 4 over the next month. And it's nice that they also differ on topic. So sometimes I will go into a university and I'll talk about design thinking. I'll run a design thinking session. In other cases, I'll go in and speak specifically about SAP. Sometimes it'll be about SAP career opportunities. And I think some of our partners and customers could get a lot of value out of doing that as well, especially if they're working with universities that are local to where it is that they're trying to recruit from. So, if you've got a company or somewhere in the public sector which is close by to Portsmouth, for example, then having X number of students that are coming out with the exact skill set that you would like to have. And if you worked with them on writing a case study specifically on your local requirements, and there were 10, 15, 20, 30 students that came off that course and they were all interested in working with you, well, then that is going to have a very significant positive impact on your recruitment. Also, though, I think it raises the attention level of students, because students, when they are in classes, they have a tendency to, I've noticed even when I'm teaching, they could be very distracted by technology, oddly enough, ironically. I really have on a number of occasions had to sort of tell students, can you please put your phones away, because in a room with 50 students, 10 of them will be on their phones. So sometimes having to sort of limit that is a little bit, it has to be done, but there's still that you need to have full attention. And I think being able to bring in customers and partners that either on the case study side or on the visiting lecture side or setting challenges side, it's something which is so engaging and it's generating such a sort of high level of conceptualization for the student. They actually see the system work and they see the problem that it resolves. They see something real and tangible. They immediately recognize the value and they recognize its importance. So I think that also helps. Ultimately, I think it comes down to if on the one hand, connecting back to the questions that we had earlier on recruitment issues and the fact that the IT industry and industries in general are suffering from the fact that there's a pool or a limited pool of skilled people and that we need to all go after the same sort of group, then partners and customers that take a more creative and slightly aggressive approach and actually really try sort of get in on the ground level, as it were, and build a relationship with the institutions so that they talk to the students whilst they're at the institution, then obviously those are the organisations that are going to be always the first point of call for any students graduating. So ultimately it comes down to what the customers and partners actually want to achieve.
Thank you. And just we're coming towards the end of our discussion now, and just a couple of things to finish on, and just reflecting on some of the things you've said there, Martin. But if we're looking at graduates and coming through university and then coming into business, why should graduates look to be starting a career in the world of SAP?
Well, I can certainly say that I think it's almost like the reverse of the points that we had right at the beginning of the session, because when you're faced with an industry that is enjoying explosive growth, rapid change, especially with regards to all things cloud, both a deepening and increasing in breadth of the number and type of solutions that you can actually deploy to solve the various problems that industries have. It means that the opportunities themselves are also growing exponentially. I noticed that in some of the partners that I've dealt with over the past, let's say, sort of 2-3 months or so, as we've been looking at how to help them with some of their recruitment issues by actually connecting them directly to universities, such as Portsmouth, is that we actually work with the partners to identify which specific projects, which specific things they actually want to do. And I think the fact that there is so much that you could do as a student looking to get into SAP means that you are literally spoiled for choice. You know, you could go down the route of, I want to be, let's say, the machine learning person, and you can become machine learning for 5-10 years and you become an absolute expert in it, if that's what you wish to be. Or you can be somebody who is more interested in the analytics side. You're actually interested in the extraction, manipulation, and presentation of data in order to assist in decision making. You could be somebody who is interested in business process re-engineering, and how do you deal with that in a situation where you would also need to change the underlying information system. You could be somebody who wants to advise on the purchasing of whichever aspects of SAP would actually be of interest to an organization. You may want to become an industry expert rather than an SAP solution-specific expert. So you actually understand that, off the top of my head, say, like, you know, the electricity industry, for example. I was working for PowerGen before, now E.ON, before I joined SAP a good almost 30 years ago. And one of the things which I noticed there is that there are certain solutions which apply to that particular industry, which often aren't as common elsewhere. So you might want to become an industry person, industry expert. The opportunities abound, you know. So, and where there's opportunity to specialize, or to become fairly broad, or to be able to change what it is that you're actually doing on a, say, semi-annual basis, that provides you with not only a great deal of flexibility in your career, it also means that you'll never be bored. There's always going to be an exciting, interesting, and engaging challenge in the world of SAP. There's always going to be something that a company needs to take advantage of, or wants to take advantage of, and needs the skills to make it happen. So you as a student, if you arrive on the doorstep with whatever those skills are, you are going to be calling the shots, you know, because it's those skills that are in demand. And I think for me, that's probably the single biggest takeaway from students that are studying SAP at university and through the University Alliance's program. It gives them that opportunity to see where they want to go, to understand what it is that they're interested in, to see how those skills translate into where they want their careers to develop, and that as a result will make them more engaged, happier, live a richer and more fulfilling life.
Thank you very much for that, Martin. And Kate, just the final words from you, if I may. You talked about businesses engaging more in different ways, and if you like, more in depth with universities. Is there anything specifically in the advantages that you see for businesses engaging with universities that they should take into consideration that you didn't cover earlier?
I think, as Martin said, businesses engaging with us or with universities means that they get to see what we're doing with the students, so they get to understand the courses that we're teaching, the technology that we're teaching, the theory that we're teaching, and they get to see the students as a pool that they can recruit from. As Martin said, it's seeing students working on projects that may be similar to the type of projects that they could be working on in those organisations, and seeing how they interact with each other, identify those students who perhaps have the leadership qualities, the creative qualities that they're looking for.
Thank you. And, you know, I'd like to thank you both, Kate, Martin, for your time and your insights. I found them very valuable, and we at UK&I will definitely be looking to work with you both further as we go into this year to really develop our offering for our members, and also for your students, Kate, in helping them engage more with business and putting the two together. And I look forward to doing that with you both as we go forward. So thank you both very, very much for that. And thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation and found value from it. And we'll keep you updated on what we're doing in the world of SAP, and also universities and graduates as we go through this year. So thank you very much. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and keep washing your hands.